For most people, trash is something useless or even disgusting. But for millions living in poverty, trash is far from worthless. It's a treasure that can be transformed into a blessing. Every year, more than 1 billion tons of untouched food are thrown away worldwide. From metal scraps to food leftovers, everything has value that can sustain the lives of some. In Manila, the capital of the Philippines, there's even a unique phenomenon where food scraps, which we consider waste, are cooked and served again as new dishes, becoming a staple for thousands. They call it pagpag. Not much different from other developing countries in Southeast Asia, except for Singapore, the Philippines is still struggling with poverty. Although the country's economy has seen rapid growth in recent years, poverty remains a structural issue that continues to plague this island nation. Manila, the capital city, is indeed the center of economic growth. Ironically, however, it is also home to millions of people living in extreme poverty and is one of the most densely populated cities in Southeast Asia. It's so crowded that Manila was even named the most densely populated city in the world in 2019. Every square kilometer in Manila is home to over 43,000 people. It feels like the city doesn't leave any room to breathe. Worse yet, more than a third of its population lives in slums, in dire conditions, such as in Tondo, the densest slum area in Asia. Tondo, once the glorious center of a pre-Hispanic kingdom, has now become one of the poorest and most rundown areas in the Philippines. It's not only known for its poverty and chaotic, filthy environment, but also for its high crime rate. Although not all parts are dangerous, some areas are plagued by serious issues like violence and drugs, especially at night. Here, life is not just about surviving day by day while hoping tomorrow won't get worse. It's about enduring in a challenging and harsh reality. Every day, people fight to get food, with some even forced to scavenge through garbage for scraps or work for extremely low wages. Amid these economic hardships, the practice of pagpag emerged as a solution for those struggling to survive. Pagpag is the art of scavenging leftover food from fast food restaurants and markets, then recooking it to make it edible again. Although this food is often older than the history of the Philippines itself, for many families in the slums, pagpag is the only answer to their growling stomachs. Before the sun even peeks through the sky, scavengers are already racing against time, sifting through piles of garbage, searching for the best ingredients, or at least those that can still be saved. They meticulously separate organic from inorganic waste, especially food scraps that still hold some hope. Leftover vegetables, fruits, or rice that seem to have a future are collected to be sold as pig feed. But what's more tempting are the meat scraps, whether chicken, beef, or pork. These leftovers aren't gathered for animals, but yes, for humans. And don't be mistaken, this effort doesn't stop at the garbage piles. Sometimes, scavengers even dive into dark, foul-smelling sewers just to find a hidden piece of meat. These food scrap collectors are the unsung heroes of the pagpag world. They are the front line, ensuring that the raw materials for pagpag are available and ready to be transformed into new dishes. Once they've collected the meat scraps, they separate the meat from the bones. The meat that passes their selection goes into plastic bags, sold as just the meat. No bones, no extras. Of course, any meat that's too soft or starting to smell gets crossed off the list. Only meat they deem fit to eat is sold, though we all know that their definition of fit might be up for debate. With prices so affordable, pagpag becomes a hot commodity. For just 20 pesos or about 35 cents, they can get a bag of meat. Super cheap, right? Usually, they buy 1 or 2 bags of pagpag, take it home, and cook it again, either for the family or to resell. Before becoming a new dish, pagpag meat is washed thoroughly to get rid of dirt and dust. After all, it's pagpag, so it has to be clean. No dust of memories clinging on. After washing, the meat is cooked with various spices to improve the taste. Now, does it taste like a 5-star restaurant? Not quite. But for pagpag lovers, it's that savory flavor that's truly addictive. Typically, pagpag meat is transformed into adobo, a famous Filipino dish known for its bold taste. Once prepared, the meal is ready to be enjoyed by the family or sold at a wallet-friendly price of just 10 pesos or 17 cents per serving. So yes, pagpag truly comes from garbage. Food that's been thrown away is taken, sorted for what's still edible, washed, cooked again, and then eaten. You could say this is the ultimate form of recycled food. The people who eat pagpag know it comes from the trash, but they don't care. Many even say pagpag is tasty, a champion in flavor, and packed with nutrition, especially for those looking for a budget-friendly way to get animal protein. Sure, most of that protein might have escaped after contact with bacteria, but hey, as long as it fills the belly, right? After all, there's a saying, hunger is not a choice. What's heartbreaking is that even small children are taught to eat pagpag. Imagine that. Kids who should be eating nutritious food are forced to consume food from the trash. But the reason is simple. They have no other choice. It's all their parents can afford. It's not that they don't know the Philippines has fast food chains like Jollibee. It's just too expensive for them. So pagpag is the perfect alternative. Besides, the pagpag meat originally came from Jollibee. The only difference is that it made a pit stop in the trash first. That's all. And that's how pagpag isn't just about survival, but also about a creative economy filled with unexpected flavors. Ironically, the Philippines was once more prosperous than Singapore and had immense potential to become one of the wealthiest nations. At one point, the Philippine peso was almost equal to the US dollar, with 2 pesos to $1. But what happened? Why is the Philippines still struggling with poverty today? Why do almost half of the capital's residents have to live in squalid slums and scavenge for food in the garbage? Why has the Philippines fallen so far behind Singapore, despite having a similar starting point? Let's examine what went wrong. After enduring a long period of colonization, the people of the Philippines finally gained independence in 1946, ushering in a new chapter in their history. Under the leadership of the first president, Manuel Roxas, and his successor, Elpidio Quirino, the Philippines embarked on a path of development with policies aimed at modernization. With support from the United States and other Western nations, the Philippines began building infrastructure, developing industries, and boosting productivity in the agricultural sector, which had long been the backbone of the country's economy. However, this aid didn't come free of charge. It came with strings attached, reinforcing the country's economic dependence on the U.S., particularly through parity rights clauses that gave American companies the same rights as Filipino citizens to exploit natural resources. Nevertheless, the Philippine economy continued to grow throughout the 1950s and early 1960s. At that time, the Philippines was truly at its peak and regarded as one of the most promising nations in Southeast Asia. While it hadn't quite reached Japan's level, many referred to it as the Pearl of the Orient due to its rapidly advancing economy, strong infrastructure, and solid education system. Under Presidents Ramon Magsaysay and Diosdado Macapagal, the economy expanded further, and the peso maintained an exchange rate of about 2 pesos to $1. Unfortunately, by the end of Macapagal's presidency, economic instability, high inflation, and growing public dissatisfaction set the stage for Ferdinand Marcos to run for president in the 1965 election. With promises of restoring stability and driving further development, Marcos won the election. At the beginning of his administration, Marcos appeared highly ambitious about developing the Philippines, launching large-scale development programs. Although much of it was financed by foreign debt, he managed to boost agricultural productivity, build grand infrastructure projects across the country, and focus heavily on massive industrial investments. The Philippines seemed poised to enter a new era of prosperity. Unfortunately, this marked the beginning of the country's economic decline. Beneath the grandeur of these developments, there was a steep price to pay. Rampant corruption, nepotism, and poor economic management began to erode the nation's foundations. Funds that should have been used for the welfare of the people instead flowed into the pockets of officials and their cronies. As if that wasn't enough, Marcos added a bonus: martial law in 1972. Freedom of expression was restricted, opposition was silenced, and companies wishing to participate in government projects were forced to pay bribes. This situation worsened with the 1973 global oil crisis, which further crippled the Philippine economy. By the 1980s, the Philippine economy was in free fall, teetering on the brink of collapse, eventually leaving the country begging the IMF for loans. But of course, loans don't come without strings attached. The conditions attached to these loans only made things harder for the people, as funds that should have been allocated for development and public welfare were instead used to pay interest on the debt. The once bright Philippine economy crumbled. Poverty spread, social inequality deepened, and the nation spiraled into painful economic despair. When Marcos was finally ousted from power in 1986 through the EDSA revolution, the Philippines he left behind was a country on the verge of economic ruin. Although there have been significant improvements since the Marcos era, such as economic growth averaging 6% per year in the early 2010s and continued progress in recent years, poverty remains one of the country's major challenges. The economic collapse of the 1980s and 1990s forced millions of Filipinos to struggle in dire circumstances. Scavenging for food in trash heaps and living in slums weren't choices they made willingly, but acts of desperation born out of an economic downturn that crushed their hopes for a better life.